Hello and welcome. Yeah. This week is the last frontier state, Alaska, and this will be my last state for just a couple months. I have a lot of traveling in April and retreats are in May, so realistically, they will not be getting done. So I'm just throwing that out there and being upfront. Don't think I'm escaping you again or ignoring this beautiful project, just taking another little pause when I know I definitely will not have time to be working on this. So if you're not caught up, you can go back and grab the states that you haven't done. If you're all caught up, I will be back in June. All right, so this week's supplies for Alaska, once again, we're going to be using our blender, the 476-933-993 and 126 Tombos. That's what I will be using. And my Prismacolors 1040, 118, 1003, and 1005. And of course, our light and dark gray Micron O1s is what I will be using, and a kneaded eraser if you've been doing that step along with me. And here is our visual of our string for this week. So Helen will be walking you through that, and I will be back to color and tangle in a bit.
This is the Alaska State Quilt tile. We start by measuring with the inches, the 3/16 to make our border. Make the border all along. Measure the 3/16 while I'm here. Now we're going to use the centimeter side of our ruler and measure, put hash marks every 2 centimeters. Center your ruler and then put it a hash mark every 2 centimeters on all sides. Draw them lightly. Mine are dark so you can see them, but draw them lightly so that they'll disappear when you tangle on top of them. Okay, the next thing we do is we draw a diagonal line from one side to the other. And then from the other, diagonally the other way. Then we put our ruler across at the 2 centimeter mark, we put it parallel to the outside edge. And just within those diagonal lines, we draw a line. Rotate and do it the same thing on all four sides. So we're making a square box in the center of the tile and within those diagonals. Now measure in the center of each of those lines we just drew, make a mark at the 2 centimeter spot. So halving them basically. And now we're going to add a little V, going from this center spot to the 2 centimeter mark on both sides. From the center of the square, we're making TV antennas. For those of you old enough to know what those are. Okay, now we're going to change from the centimeter side to the inch side and put our ruler in the center there. And center it so that it's close to the 1.5 inches. You might have a little 16th extra, but just center your ruler. It will be fine. It doesn't need to be exact. And then do the same thing at the bottom. Draw a mark at 1/2 inch and 1 inch. Then rotate your tile and do the same thing. 1/2 inch and 1 inch. 1/2 inch and 1 inch. Drawing those with lines parallel to the outside edge. Rotate. And do the same thing. And there you have Alaska.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and take that kneaded eraser and take this beautiful string. Thank you so much, Helen. And tone these graphite lines down just a little bit. Once again, allowing them to be seen, but not to overpower. Allowing our ink to not get muddled by the graphite of these images. I think you can still see that. We should be good. Okay, so there's a whole lot of color happening in this tiny little tile. It's going to be great. At first, I hesitated, and where was I going to go with this? But I think it all needs to be represented. So I'm going to start with my 993, and it doesn't matter which channel you choose, the top or bottom, the right or left, doesn't matter. Just be consistent in whichever one you choose. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my right or my bottom channel, and I'm going to go ahead and offer that gold color into the mix. And make sure your blender is dry from the last time you used it, and go ahead and circular motion, tone that harsh line down and blend that out into the center. And the circular motion allows us to get rid of those sharp edges and carry that color through, creating that depth on the outside, highlight on the inside, which helps us ultimately in our end result. Okay, so now that I have one done, I want to make sure that each channel follows suit. So I did the right side, so I want to make sure that I do the right side of every other corner channel. right. So as we begin to lay out this palette, what can I offer you about Alaska? Hmm. Well, we know that the Kodiak bear comes from Alaska. It is the largest state of all of our states, so large that it can fit the next three largest states into itself. So we have Texas, California, and Montana that can all fit within the state of Alaska. That's how big the state of Alaska is. So, with it being the largest state, only 1%, yep, 1% of the land is taken up by people. So, let that sink in for just a moment. Now, mind you, we have 5% of the whole state being made up of glaciers. We have at least 130 known volcanoes, 70 of which are potentially active. Um, so it's definitely a state of lots of land, um, outdoorsy things to do. All right. The other side of, I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to let that sit. So I'm going to go to that big center block, and I'm going to go ahead and choose to ink in all of those blocks, but I am not going to choose to ink in the X in the center. So there's a reason why. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and with my orange, ink in all of those blocks individually. Now, last week I got caught in inking too many boxes at one time and not having enough wet ink to manipulate. So be mindful of my mistakes and probably only ink one box in at a time and blend that before it dries. So just take your time, enjoy the process as we go through the state of Alaska. So yeah, 1% of the whole state is contributed to population, people. The state flower is the forget-me-not, and the state fish is the salmon, and it's actually considered the salmon fishing mecca of the world. There's 5 different types of salmon that can be found in Alaska. So we know that Alaska is cold, right? Um, you bundle up like you've never bundled up before when you visit. Yeah, at least that's what I hear. I've never been to Alaska. Not yet, anyway. I will be. But we have had a very, very, very cold winter in Pennsylvania this year, or at least where I am in Pennsylvania. And we have had snow on the ground since December 2nd. We have not seen the grass since December 2nd. And below freezing for an entire month, with some days at negative temperatures. But if any of us were complaining, we should just stop right now because in researching Alaska, I found that the town of Prospect Creek Camp in 1971 had negative 80 degrees Fahrenheit. How is that even possible? Like, how did they? I, I just can't comprehend. Anyway, yeah, it's on the records. It's as the coldest day ever recorded, the coldest day ever recorded. Yeah, so there's that. In the camera, these colors look very close together, but in reality, if you're doing them, you'll see that so close at all. This is the state of 24-hour sunshine and 24-hour darkness, several months throughout the year, obviously at different times, but winter running from basically November through January with no sun. Now, it doesn't get pitch black like it does around here, but still has to, I'm sorry, it has to play mentally into the cards. 126 is heading into these triangular shapes right underneath that gold and a side of that channel that has yet to be defined. So this green into each one of these triangular spaces. I'm going to lay a little bit more of a palette down. So I'm going to make that a little bit wider, making sure my blender is cleaned off. And I made a little bit of a bigger palette line because this is a larger space. I didn't want to run out of ink before I got to the center. The state sport is, you guessed it, dog mushing. So that's fun. And because of those long summer days and endless sun, they have a huge produce season. And not only is it a huge produce season as far as length, but it has a huge production of the largest produce ever. And when I say that, like crazy largest produce ever produced, cabbage that could be 138 pounds, turnips that could grow as heavy as 40 pounds. So those long nights, or those long days, I should say, with no dark nights, offer this crazy growing season with crazy weights and sizes to their produce. I can't imagine finding a 138-pound head of cabbage in my garden. Just another day, I suppose, in Alaska. If you can wait that long to eat your cabbage, I'm not sure how long it takes to grow a 138-pound cabbage, but there it is. All right. So our triangles are green. And the state color for Alaska is deep blue. So once again, I hesitate because I don't want this blue to overpower the whole tile and change that whole perspective. But I just think with 34,000 miles of coastlines, I think it needs to have a voice. So this deep blue represents the sky, the sea, the mountain lakes, and their state flower, the forget-me-nots. So I'm going to just go ahead and offer this blue in here and hope that it doesn't become too much against all the other colors that we have going on in here. And although this is a big space, I'm going to go ahead and opt for less is more and hope I have enough to cover the space. We have Denali State Park in Alaska. Denali being the highest point in the United States, actually the highest point in North America. So once again, Alaska only has one state color. I've opted for the yellow. And I'll get to the orange and the green when we get to our tangling. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and offer orange to my sides. I'm going to use that direct palette. or I guess I should say direct application. And although the same marker, notice the difference between our orange on the inside and our orange on the outside. It's always our goal to have that, or mine anyway, to have that border be a bit more pure or concentrated, saturated than the inside of my quilt. Just because when we add our designs to our fabrics, sometimes they get lost when we use the direct colors. And in my little squares, I'm going to go ahead and add some green. I think that tones that blue down a bit and kind of keeps it in place. I'm going to go ahead and take that orange back and focus on those deckled edges, getting rid of those bright white edges so that when we put them together, they all blend together instead of having a white edge on the side of it. Again, this tile's pretty saturated. We might want to wait a bit and make sure that that tile has kind of dried up a bit. You know, you are dry when it's not cold or cool anymore. So just take a moment and allow that tile to dry, and we'll come back to tangle. All right. Should be all dry by now. And I'm going to start with my light gray. Always a choice to start and only use dark gray or whatever you opt. And I'm going to start in these yellow channels. And in these yellow channels, I'm going to do the tangle sun up, sun down to represent the 24 hours of daylight and the 24 hours of darkness. So sun up, sun down. And I'm going to use this first side or this center box as my first side. So I'm going to come up, come down. So I'm going to create these triangles that flip-flop. So triangles that kind of flow up and down. And once I have those triangles put together, I'm going to curve under, over, under, over. So I'm going to create this wavy line that inevitably will curve up and down in the center of each triangle. Does that make sense? So each triangle that we have has a hump, either up or down, that is in the center based on that wavy line that we just laid. All right. So now that we have that wavy line, here's where our sun up, sun down comes into play. So I'm going to add ray lines underneath or above that arch. So when the curve falls down below, I'm going to put those ray lines down below. I'm going to turn my tile, and when the ray line or when the curve is above, my ray lines will ray out the top. Sun up, sun down. See how that goes? And I'm going to do that all the way across. So the space underneath the wave in whatever direction it goes. Inevitably, I always turn my tile, so it's always underneath, but when we visually look at it, there's a top and a bottom, right? All right. So there's sun up, sun down. I'm going to do that in each yellow or gold channel. So I'm going to redefine the box in the center and begin my flipping and flopping of my triangles. I'm going to add a wavy line that waves from the center of each triangle. And then I'm going to add those ray lines. Doesn't matter how many lines end up underneath each hump. Doesn't matter if one channel equals the other channel. None of that matters. We're just filling in that space with arid lines from side to side. Drop those shoulders down away from your ears. Unhinge that jaw. Let that tension melt away. As we offer this sun up, sun down with repetitious strokes, you know what you're doing. There's no stress. Just let go. Sun up, sun down, honoring their endless summers and their endless winters. All right. So inside of these dark blue sections, I'm going to offer, I can't not use it, the forget-me-not. So we have a Tangle forget-me-not. There's State Flowers, the forget-me-not. It was too perfect to ignore. So the forget-me-not is, of course, a flower, but It's not a flower because that's representative. And I'm going to start in the center to do this so that I can kind of fill out on either side as necessary. So it starts with a dot, and that dot gets arid. And once we have that arid dot, we're going to add almost a star around it. So I'm going to add 5 points to that center orb. And now that I have this star, and I may have done mine a bit too large for this go round, but that's okay. I'm going to add almost a heart-shaped petal around it. So I'm going to start in the bottom and I'm going to add that heart shape. Start in the bottom, add that heart shape. And I'm going to do this all the way around, grabbing each one of those star peaks and encasing that point with a petal. So now that I have this forget-me-not, I'm going to just add a little spiral and a leaf out one side and a little spiral and a leaf out the other side. And we typically don't add a lot of detail into our fabrics. So have at any details that you want to add into that flower. I'm going to let mine just be. So I'm going to go ahead and add another dot, and we're going to aura that dot. Again, going to offer 5 star peaks all the way around, and then a heart-shaped petal. And when I say heart-shaped, it really just kind of has that kind of valley in the center that kind of just ties it together. Spiral to one side, spiral to the other side, and just a little leaf. Adding just a little seed to the ends of those spirals as well, just because we can. I'm almost wanting to ink in those star shapes, but for now I'm just going to sit with it. So all of those blue channels, get a forget-me-not. And you could grow a whole garden of forget-me-nots if that one single expression doesn't really do it for you. As I'm doing this forget-me-not, I feel as though I may have just replicated my first tangle. I have to go back and look if we did a state with forget-me-not. Bummer if we already have. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and ink in those stars. I'm going to go for it. Star peaks, just tone them down or ground them into the space. They're a little airy for me, so. All right. Awesome. So I already told you that I'm ignoring this X. And we can add it later when we stitch if we so choose. But the tangle that I've chosen for this center is a bit confusing in and of itself. So I don't want to confuse it with an X that goes through it. So here we go. We are going to, in this orange space, add the tangle salmon. Now, stay with me. It's not difficult at all, but we just have to turn our tile in the correct directions to make things all work. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is focus on each individual square within this center block. So each square in this center block is going to get an arch from the bottom left corner to the top right corner. So bottom left, top right, bottom left, top right. And you're going to do that in every row. So inevitably, you're going to have connections that happen into, right now, the top corner, top right corner of the box. Okay. Now that we have that arch from the bottom to the top, we're going to turn our tile 90 degrees to the left. So here I am, arch is off to the top left. I'm going to turn that to the left so that that arch is now facing me. Okay. And once again, I'm going to lay an arch from the bottom left to the top right in each one of those boxes. So you'll notice that you should be connecting some of these boxes together, right? Or some of these lines together. So you're just extending them through. Forget what I'm saying because that might be confusing. You're just doing an arch from the bottom left to the top right. And now that you've done that, what I was trying to say is this is now one big arch. This is now one big arch. So they connected right here on that center block. Okay, that's all I was trying to say. Once again, we're going to turn our tile 90 degrees to the left. So we have this little space facing us, the little space of the X facing us. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. Bottom left, top right. Bottom left, top right. So you're creating these rice shapes now in each one of those boxes. Always doing bottom left, top right. Once you have those arches done, you're going to turn to the left 90 degrees again, and you're going to have another open bottom left, top right that you're going to add an arch to. And once again, these rice shapes are going to form in each one of these boxes. So that's the Tangle salmon. So you'll notice how as they connect, they're forming circles on the outside that have rice shapes coming to the center, almost in a floral shape. Yeah. All right. Perfect. So that's our salmon because it's our state fish. And that's why we used that orange color in that section as well. So we have four green triangles that are left over. Well, I could not let a 138-pound cabbage go unnoticed on my state tile. So that's where I'm headed, to the cabbage rows. And I'm only going to do half of a cabbage rose as it sits right here into this space. So I'm going to start by building my center. So I'm going to add a half orb on the line of my border. Now that I have this half orb, if you know cabbage rose, it is created by layers that form by always starting with a crescent moon. Okay. So we can only go so far because we're only doing half of the cabbage rose. So I'm going to start with a crescent moon for as much as I can see. Okay. So now that I have that one arch or crescent started, I can't work down here. So I have to visualize what's happening up here. So I'm going to start in the center of that crescent moon, which I'm going to say is right about here, and I'm going to add another crescent moon. Now, the catch to this tangle working is you always want to start in the center of the previous crescent moon. So turning the tile, center. Well, that's as far as I can go because everything else is the center down below, right? So I'm going to come back up here and start in the center again in the opposite direction. So here I started in the center and went off to the right. I'm coming back around and it's landing in the center of that first crescent moon. So here I am again, center, center, center. So I have only half of that wrap or layering of the crescent rose or the cabbage rose happening by placing all of these crescent moons and starting a new one in the center. Okay. And if you didn't get that, of course, you can pause and go back. Otherwise, just add layers in there and fake it, right? Nobody knows what a cabbage rose looks like. So now that we have that cabbage head on the center, I'm going to go ahead and add my first petal. And once again, these petals are shaped like hearts. So they have that dip in the center of that petal. And I'm going to do that all the way around for as many petals as I can fit on both the left and the right. So now that I have these petals laid, I'm going to go ahead and tether an aura underneath each one of those dips and add a little flip to that petal. And there we have our cabbage rose. I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit of detail into those petals just because it's large petals and just way too much open space for my liking. But there is our cabbage rose. So here we go again. We're going to lay a half orb. And that half orb is going to be filled up with crescent moon shape. So I'm going to start at the top and add a crescent moon as far as I can. The next crescent moon is built from the center. So I'm going to say that right about here is the center of this crescent moon had it gone all the way down and around. So I'm going to start here and add another crescent moon. Center, crescent moon. All right, which takes us back down around, and we're going to land somewhere in the center of that original crescent moon. Center, center, center. Our heart-shaped petals or leaves. Tethering that aura on the inside to show that flip. And then a little bit of detail, line work to define those petals. So there's our 138-pound cabbage being represented in our Alaska state. Alaska's only one of 2 states that you can't drive through the state of the United States to get to. So you need a passport to get to Alaska if you're driving through Canada to get there, right? But you could fly direct if you don't have a passport. I really love how these cabbages have come together, how they look in the tile. Mm. So pretty. A lot going on in Alaska here, but I think it all works. It all really came together nicely. Um, Kind of digging it. Yeah. So here we are. We're stitching. I'm grabbing that dark gray micron, and I'm going to go into each one of these patches and stitch it up with slow, deliberate, intentional stitches. We don't want those hurried tales that happen as we flick that pen down onto our surface. Hold your tile down. Try to gain control of how that pen goes down and up from that paper. No different than that thread going in and out, creating each one of those individual stitches of our quilts. This is hand stitched, right? No programmed machine. Offer yourself grace and enjoy the journey, yeah? So here we are. I'm just going to pause and stop working my stitches on the outside, and let's talk about this center. Now, if we recall, there is an X that goes right through the center, and each one of these boxes are individual. I'm going to go ahead now that we're all tangled up and acknowledge that X. Um, and I'm doing it mostly so that you can see the outcome of noticing the X. You can choose to keep those boxes all intact, or you can take that stitching right down the center, dividing those salmon tangles in half. And then each box getting stitched up. Blow that up for you. Getting stitched up individually. Just wanted to leave those lines out while we tangled again, just so they didn't get confusing. There's always choices. Take what speaks to you, leave what doesn't. I have to say, I don't hate it. And adds a bit more detail into this quilt since these patches are pretty large this week. We were able to do some nice tingling into these spaces. Sometimes we're stuck with such small spaces, you're at a loss for how we're representing anything inside of those spaces. I just realized that this center should have been on either side of the line because we need that double stitching to be happening. And what are the odds of your stitching being exactly the same on both sides? So I didn't pay any mind to matching those stitches up. Maybe I should have. Maybe quilters really do that. I don't know. But anyway, that's the center all stitched up if we opt for that center division. All right. Don't forget that border. And if you know what you're doing with these individual quilts, you may be wanting to also stitch the edge of the tile or the border. Um, if you're uncertain, just go ahead and let that edge hang out for a bit until you kind of finalize your vision. All stitched up. Ooh, I'm really liking this one. I think this green really balances it out nicely. Anyway, heading to those shading tools. We're gonna pick up that 1003, and that's what I'm gonna use into that gold section. Each one of those gold channels is gonna get circular motion tight against that stitching. Once again, we're trying to replicate that natural shading that happens from that needle going in and out of that material, offering that highlight on the center and that depth on the sides. That blue is going to get that 1040. Making that center just pop. And those edges just get a little deeper, a little depth to them. Ah, 10,005. Oh, 1,005. It's going into that cabbage. And then we have that orange left. And how you shade that is just going to be determined on how you've decided to cut your material. Did you cut it with the X or did you just do the big block? Either way is fine. I'm noticing that I may have picked a too dark orange, which I'm totally fine with, but super light touch just so that it doesn't get away from you. And if you don't like it, of course, go grab another one. Yeah, kind of like it. Great highlight on that orange. Yeah, nice. All right. So there we are. Alaska. One more state completed on our journey. Thank you ever so much for joining me. Until next time.